welcome, 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 welcome to our monthly Ascac'S study group. All right. Yes, we on, we online. If we were in the streets, we'd be in Newark. All right. But we're streaming from Zoom and we're streaming on social media, brothers and sisters. This is a live broadcast on all over social media. All right. Because we want to inform our people. We want to get our people to be informed about this knowledge, about this wisdom, brothers and sisters. All right. And so we're streaming on Zoom, we're streaming on social media simultaneously. Um, so I'm really excited about today. So let me start. Let me first begin my lecture. Let me first begin the program with giving thanks to the Creator of the heavens and earth. All right, a Creator that is called by many names in this world, such as Yahweh, God, Allah, Dios, Odumare, Amin Ra. Right, but but in the spirit, but as our in our but as our Black nationalist freedom fighter taught us, the great Malcolm X, Omar Wali, El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, we must put aside our religious differences that divides our African world to come together as one united African people. Therefore, I say that regardless of land, language, and culture, brothers and sisters, all right, there is but one God. All right, Ashe. Secondly, I pay homage to all respected family community ancestors by saying Ibaye Ashe. The words Ibaye, Ashe are two Yoruba words. Ibaye means blessing to the ancestors. Ashe means it is so. All right. Now, because we as Black people are from many walks of life and political philosophies on the globe, I greet you all with Pan-African greetings of Black power, all power to the people. Stop the shooting, stop the killing, stop the violence, peace in the streets, no justice, no no justice, no peace. Yahuru, free the land, free the land. Hallelujah. Praise the Lord. Assalamu alaikum. Share Lafia Need, Amanla, and of course, Uncle Jesselnev. What's cracking? What's popping? What's up? All right. So, Hotep, Hotep. Come on, we are African people, right? That come from a tradition of call and response, brothers and sisters. Therefore, when I say Hotep, you need to respond by saying Hotep.
Hotep, Africa.
Hotep, my brother, Hotep.
Hotep, 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 Hotep. Yes, Hotep, peace. That word is from ancient. Is ancient. It's come from the ancient. It comes from Metunet, the ancient language of Kemet, or what Europeans and Arabs call Egypt, right? The Metuneter, Europeans and Arabs call it the hieroglyphics. It's a real word. It's one of the oldest words. Some scholars say is the oldest word for peace in human history. So Hotep, Hotep, brothers and sisters. Um, Again, we have a very special guest. We're gonna hear from him very soon. All right, we have a very special guest. But before we introduce our very special guest, again, it is our tradition to pay homage to our ancestors. All right, by the pouring of libation. All right, so we're gonna pour libation. I don't know if you guys can see my little. I got a little plant over here. All right, we're gonna pour libation. All right. Again, I will use two African Nigerian Yoruba words, Ibaye and Ashe. Ibaye means blessings to the ancestors. Ashe means so be it, or it is so. It is traditional. It is a traditional African culture. Before any community event to pay homage to the ancestors, our present day existence has been built upon our ancestors. It's also traditional. It is also traditional African culture to use water, and we pour that water into a plant or on the earth. All right. Um, it is also traditional African culture to have people call and respond. So when I say Ibaye after calling on an ancestor, you say Ashe. All right. So let us begin. Let us begin paying homage to our ancestors. We pay homage to our ancestors who became the first people to populate Africa and the entire planet Earth. Ibaye, Ashe.
Ashe.
We pay homage to our ancestors who built great civilizations such as Nubia, Axum, Kush, Kemet, Egypt, Ghana, Mali, Songhai, Zulu, we say to those ancestors, Ibaye, Ashe.
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 We pay homage to the ancestors whose spirituality laid a foundation for the world's faith traditions. All right, Ibaye, Ashe.
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 We pay homage to our ancestors who experienced the horrors of being kidnapped in Africa for slavery. Ibaye.
Ashe.
Ashe.
We pay homage to our ancestors who experienced the horrors of the Middle Passage for slavery in the Americas and in Europe. Ibaye.
Ashe.
Ashe.
We pay homage to our ancestors who experienced the horrors of the slave plantation life in the Western world. Ibaye.
Ashe.
Ashe.
We pay homage to the ancestors who experienced the horrors of the auction block. We say, Ibaye.
Ashe.
Pay homage to our ancestors who created a new black life in the Americas. Ibaye.
Ashe.
We pay homage to our ancestors who fought for the abolition from slavery in the United States. Ibaye.
Ashe.
Ashe.
We pay homage to our ancestors who experienced the terrorism of the Ku Klux Klan. Ibaye.
Ashe.
We pay homage to our ancestors who fought for civil and human rights. Ibaye.
Ashe.
We pay homage to our ancestors who fought for Black power. Ibaye.
Ashe.
We pay homage to our ancestors who fought for revolutionary African cultural empowerment. Ibaye.
Ashe.
Ashe.
We pay homage to our ancestors who worked to reconstruct African history. Ibaye.
Ashe.
We pay homage to our ancestors who struggled to present to the world a true picture of real democracy. Ibaye.
Ashe.
We pay homage to our ancestors whose wisdom we extract daily to create a pathway for Black liberation and human progress. We say, Ibaye.
Ashe.
We pay homage to our ancestors, right? And y'all can start calling out ancestors. Brothers and sisters, you can start calling our ancestors. I'm gonna start with myself. My brother who just became a new ancestor, my comrade, my brother, known in the streets as Monster Cody Scott, but he became enlightened, became conscious, became a revolutionary. He adopted the name Shanika Shakur. I say that as Shanika Shakur. Ibaye. Ashe.
Ashe.
You call me.
Ashe.
Walter Rodney.
Walter Rodney. Ibaye.
Ashe.
Dr. Khaled.
Who transitioned April 4th.
I'm sorry?
That my mother who transitioned April 4th.
All right. Mom. What's mom's name?
Beverly.
Sister Beverly. Ibaye.
Ashe.
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 My mama.
Al-Haj Malik Shabazz.
Al-Haj Malik Shabazz. Omar Wali. Brother Omar Wali. Ibaye. Ashe.
Dr. Khaled Muhammad.
Ashe.
All right.
Ashe.
All right. To my sister, Christina Cortez. Ibaye. Ashe.
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 All right.
Yes.
We pay homage. We're going to pay homage. We can go on forever, but we're going to pay homage to our ancestors who are known and unknown. Known and unknown. We conclude with Ibaye. Ashe.
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 Ibaye.
Ashe.
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 All right. Give yourselves a strong round of applause. You can do it there's a little icon on Zoom where you can give electronic applause, but I'm still old school. I like applause. All right. Ashe, 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 Ashe. Brothers and sisters, we have a very special guest we've honored today. This brother he's always pulled in many directions, and rightfully so. He has so much wisdom to share with our generation, particularly African youth, Black youth. All right. And so while he's physically amongst us, he hasn't gone on. Thank God he hasn't gone into the ancestor realm yet, but he's physically amongst us. We're going to tap in. We're going to tap into his wisdom, all right, and his knowledge, and learn from this brother, all right, in order for us to build rebuild the Black liberation movement, to rebuild the African world community, to rebuild our people, all right, to make ourselves whole again. And this brother has a long track record of struggle, of being active in the struggle for Black liberation, all right? So what I want to do, I'm going to read off just a little bit of his bio. I think it's important that we know about this brother, because some of us just, we don't know, all right? Some of us are just coming into this consciousness, all right? Or as young brothers and sisters, some of us just becoming woke, all right? So our very special guest is our brother, the legendary Africana Studies professor, James Small, all right? We affectionately call him Baba Small, all right? We call him Baba Small. You may hear, some of you brothers and sisters may hear say Baba. Baba is a term of respect, all right? It's a term of respect in the African conscious community, African-centered conscious community. We say Baba, right? So Baba Small, a little bit about his background. Professor James Small was born in 1945, right? On a plantation, Arcadia plantation, located on the banks of the, I don't want to mispronounce some of these Native American words, so please forgive me, all right, if I tear up the word, all right? I'm trying to, as Baba Zaid used to teach us, we try to reclaim our African, we struggle to reclaim our African tongue, so just bear with me. On the Wakama River, this lowland rice plantation is located where the Wakama, Petty, and Black rivers converge to meet the Atlantic Ocean on the shores of historic Georgetown, South Carolina. Professor Small was born to a family that traces their descendant from enslaved Africans to the Yoruba, Akan, Iwe people of West Africa. Professor Small's heritage also stems from the Native American ancestors that inhabited these South Carolina shores. Both his maternal great-grandmother and his paternal great-grandmother were members of the Chicora Nation and made their home along the mighty Wakama River. Professor Small graduated from the all-black Howard High School in Georgetown, South Carolina in 1964. He then served in the United States Navy for 2 years during the Vietnam era. Upon his release from military service, Professor Small, someone's chiming in, Professor Small moved to New York City to join the Organization of Afro-American Unity, founded by the legendary Malcolm X. In 1967, Professor Small became Imam Minister of the Muslim Mosque Incorporated, also founded by Malcolm X. In 1975, Professor Small traveled to the holy city of Mecca in Saudi Arabia to make his holy pilgrimage, the Hajj. For 11 years, Professor Small served as principal bodyguard to the late Ella L. Collins, the sister of Malcolm, the then president of the Organization of Afro-American Unity, OAAU. Between the years of 1966 and 1980, Professor Small held membership in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, that's SNCC, and the NAACP, that's the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, Uhuru Fighters, and OAAU. During this period, Professor Small had the opportunity to interact with such historical giants as Congressman Adam Clayton Powell Jr., Kwame Ture, H. Rod Brown, all right, who is now goes by the name Imam Jamil Alameen of SNCC, Eldridge Cleaver, Zaid Shakur, and Lumumba Shakur of the original Black Panther Party, in which he served as a liaison between the Black Panther Party and the Organization of Afro-American Unity. Professor Small has been a member of the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilizations, that's ASCAC, ASCAC, for 14 years. He served as president of ASCAC Eastern Region for 2 years, where he worked and studied with Dr. John Henry Clark, Dr. Yusuf Ben Yakinen, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, Dr. Asha Hilliar, Dr. Wade Nobles, Dr. Amos Wilson, and Dr. Francis Cress Wilson, to name a few. That was the sister that was speaking in the very beginning of our meeting, Dr. Francis Cress Wilson. Ibaye Ashe to the sister. Professor Small taught for nearly 20 years at the City University of New York, including 17 years at the City College of New York's Black Studies Department, 13 of those years also serving as an administrator, and 2 years at New York City Technical College. Professor Small has taught courses on Malcolm X, the traditional African religion. Professor Small is a priest in the Yoruba religion, Pan-Africanism, crime in the urban community, urban crisis, and African folklore. All right. These include the Phil Donahue Show, the Rolanda Watts Show, the Robert Show, Matt Laura, Non-Broadcast Closet Show, the Charlie Rose Show, Tony Brown's Journal, like it is with Gil Noble, as well as numerous cable programs and local and national, international television and radio shows. Professor Small has lectured at some of the most prestigious colleges and universities in the world. Among the many colleges and universities where Professor Small has lectured at are the University of Manchester, England, University of Virgin Islands, St. Thomas, VI University of the West Indies, Port Spain, Trinidad, University of West Indies, Kingston, Jamaica, Princeton University, Princeton, New Jersey, Harvard University, Boston, Mass, Yale University, New Haven, Connecticut, Columbia University, and New York University of New York, to mention a few. Professor Small is currently conducting educational and cultural tours throughout Africa and the United States, and he's also working on 2 books. One, a collection of his lectures on Malcolm X, a collection of his works on Malcolm X, and the other on the topic of post-traumatic slave syndrome. We thank, and we need to give a strong round of applause to Baba Small for this, brothers, for many other things, but particularly this. We thank him for his consistent over 50 years service of leading the community on an annual pilgrimage to Malcolm X, Omar Wali El Hajj Malik El Shabazz's gravesite to pay homage to our Black nationalist freedom fighter. We need to give him a strong round of applause for consistent. Baba Zaid, I gotta mention Baba Zaid, because Baba Zaid used to always let us know these things about our brother Baba Small. All right. So this brother's been consistent. All right. So because of his long track record of struggle in Black liberation movement, we want to ask Professor Small to give a Coweta analysis on the necessity of an African-centered worldview for Black liberation. And for those of us who don't know what Coweta is, Coweta philosophy was put in the streets. It gave context, all right, for African people to challenge white supremacy for Black political power, right, in this country, particularly in Newark, New Jersey, all right, Brick City, as it is affectionately is called by the community, right? And it was led by our great brother. He's an ancestor now. We say Ibaye Ashe. All of this was led by our brother Amamu Amiri Baraka and his queen Amini Baraka. Since we got we in Ascac'S, we always reflect the Mayat principle of everything, men and women. So we mentioned Imamu Baraka, we must mention Amina Baraka. Our great ancestor and elder put Coweta in the streets and challenged white supremacy, all right, challenged white supremacy by organizing Black people for Black political power. That was in the 60s and early 70s, right, late 60s. Now we come to this point in the current era, all right, of time. And so we asking Baba Small to give us some perspective on that. We have movements, in Newark with our good brother, Mayor Raz J. Baraka, and he has helped organize community to seize power, right? Black and brown power in the city of Newark, right? But we have other cities that are not blessed with brothers or sisters like Mayor Raz J. Baraka. So we want to hear from my brother. He gives us wisdom on that. But again, for those who don't know who created Coweta, Dr. Malana Karinga is the creator of the Coweta philosophy. Coweta is a Kiswahili word meaning tradition and reason. It is pronounced as Kawaida. He defines Coweta as a communitarian African philosophy created in the context of the African American liberation struggle and developed as an ongoing synthesis on the best of African thought and practice in constant exchange with the world. Dr. Karinga is a professor of Black Studies at California State University at Long Beach. He also co-founded the US organization, the Revolutionary Cultural Nationalist Black Power movement, established on September 7th, 1965 in Los Angeles, California. Kawita is the foundation of Kwanzaa, a Pan-African-centered holiday celebrated from December 26th to December 1st all over the world. The philosophy of Kawita is largely responsible for the 1972 National Black Political Convention in Gary, Indiana, the increase of Black elected officials in America, and the seizure of Black political power in Newark, New Jersey. So with all that being said, brothers and sisters, let's bring on our brother, legendary Africana Studies professor, community activist, community organizer, our brother, your brother, Baba, Professor James Small.
What's up to the Ascac'S study group of Newark, and to my beautiful brother who's done well in organizing this event, along with your committee. You know, you can't do anything by yourself.
Absolutely, that's right.
And as Kawita taught us, it has to be communal, collective, and cooperative if it's to reflect Africa. Now, Kawita we were using Swahili, a new word.
Right.
But it was nothing new. It was about Africans trying to organize their communities as Africans for Africans. So I'd like to just read a definition by Dr. Asa Hilliar on freedom. We know the word freedom comes from the two Greek words, free, to liberate, and dome, your mind. So when one says freedom, it's not taking over a building, controlling a city, controlling a school. It's the liberation of your mind. If you liberate your mind, you can do all of those other things. So the liberation of the mind comes first. And one of the things that Dr. Karanga, and especially Baba Mary Baraka, God bless his soul, knew was that it had to be Africa first in terms of its construct. You know, at the time they were struggling, and he too, Baba Baraka, bless his spirit, was looking at the Marxist syndrome as an implemental tool, looking at what we could do with the American system, as many of our people in the quote-unquote civil rights movement was doing, and then trying to find a synthesis where the African concept could use the best of those for our development. And so I'll start with the definition by Dr. Hilliard on freedom. Now, how much time do I have so I can time myself? I got my clock right there.
Baba Small, you got as much time as you need, brother.
It's not good to say to an old dude.
You got time. All right. We don't keep it too long, but you got time. We don't keep it too long.
Dr. Hilliard told us that our first mistake was that we thought of freedom as a place rather than as a continuation of struggle. And then he says, tyranny never sleeps. He said, our second mistake, that we thought of freedom as a goal rather than as a launching pad from which to reach our goals. Without purpose, freedom hardly matters. Our third mistake was that we thought that freedom made us free. That, however, is a license, not freedom at all. Freedom is being shackled to identity, purpose, and direction, and being in constant pursuit. That last one is most important, being shackled to our identity. And we've gone through a lot of issues around the question of the identity. Now we've got people calling us people of color. I'm an African, I'm not people of color. I'm not fighting for people of color. The Chinese is fighting for themselves. Our Afro-Latino brothers who claim Afro-Latino is fighting for themselves. They got their own institution, their own purpose, their own construct. Our East Indian cousins, they're fighting for themselves. And in most instances, they don't involve us in the fruits of the victories that they're fighting for. Only when we get into the fight that we are told to use different identities. The minute we reach for our goals, then we got to be minorities. Then we got to be people of color, etc. No, We are Africans. Malcolm said, if a cat has kittens in an oven, it does not become biscuits. The fact that we were born in America does not lessen, no matter how many generations, our Africanness. And we've got to be very clear on that, because we can't look to Africa like we're borrowing something. When we look at Africa, we're taking an aspect of ourselves. We're not borrowing anything. Normally, when I tell people where I was born, I tell them I was born in an African village in South Carolina, an African village, because that's who lived there, African people. And their spirit was African spirit. And their aspirations was African aspirations. So it doesn't matter where we are in the world, we need to be clear about that. And then Malcolm X told us, somebody asked me, Brother Minister Malcolm, what do you mean by Black nationalism? And this feeds back into Kawaida. He said, Black nationalism means you own the economic, politics, and culture where you live, and you control it. Now, he used the word social for culture, but we had used that word social to imply culture in the language in America. But he says you must be in control of the economics, the politics, and the culture where you live. He later said you must control the land, the labor, and the resources where you live. And so when we have these discussions, when we talk about ancient history, what is it that we're borrowing from them? Ascac'S, the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilization, has been an extraordinary instrument, but they've made one fundamental mistake. We've made one fundamental mistake. We look only at one civilization, yet our words say civilizations. So we need to look at the multiple civilizations that we built, even before Kemet. We must think in our brain, we must think in our minds what we really want to see, and make sure that we're clear on what we're looking at. Before there was a Kemet, there was a Karma in the Sudan, a civilization that gave birth to Kemet. We had and I'm going to read them off, the Kingdom of Axum, which is now in Ethiopia, the Kingdom of Kush, the Kingdom of Mali, the Kingdom of Ghana, and Songhai, Carthage, Punt, Axum, the Kilwa civilization on the East Coast. We have the Monomotapa civilization. We built multiple civilizations. What is civilization? Is when the human being, the African human being, came together to imitate the universe in their social order. The social order that we built, that we call civilizations, which is an artificial reflection of the order we found in nature and in the universe. And it's really that simple. We've made it complex with religions. Even African religions, even though Africans didn't have a religion, Africans had a worldview. And I know you're talking today about a worldview. Kawaida was attempting to reflect the African worldview in the construct of a social ecology in an urban community in North America. What is that African worldview? And I think that's where we get lost, when we get caught up in religion and rituals and traditions without understanding why they were formed. So the African worldview at its foundation is communal, is collective, and is cooperative. And those three words, communal, collective, and cooperative, is a reflection on the cosmology and the ecology that we call nature, that we are a product of. And so our ancestors, as we see very clearly in Kemet, studied for hundreds of thousands of years. We know in order to see all of the heavenly bodies change position so that you can notice that it went somewhere and came back to where it began, took 25,000 years. So you can't even make a calendar unless you've studied for at least 25,000 years. But that won't do it either, because you have to make sure that is repetitious. So it took another 25,000 years to see them do the same thing the same way again, under the same order. So it took at least 50,000 years before we could set up a calendar, you know? And we did, which meant we had to study the movement of the stars, the movement of the planets, the movement of the constellations, the movement of the stars in the constellations, the movement of the constellations in their space in the sky. And what did that reflect on the Earth? But that is a study of astronomy. But astronomy is for the scientists. We call them priests, but the ancient Africans did not call anybody priests. It was their word for scientists, whatever that word in given the language they were speaking. But the scientists was taken care of by the community as they are today. But their job was to study nature and study cosmology and interpret it to give us the laws to govern ourselves. And in doing so, they had to create another science to explain the science. So they created astrology to explain astronomy, because the masses didn't have time to study astronomy. And the scientists can't explain all of those scientific studies of all of those years. So how do you put together a system so the masses understand what you understand? It's like Medu Neter. People say Medu Neter is the language of the priest. No, it was not. You know, Medu Neter was the language that the priest class put together for the masses, because the masses were fundamentally illiterate. They didn't have time to study. I'm raising goat, I'm doing the fishing, I'm building the nets, I'm building the boats, I'm running the farms, I'm harvesting the wheat, I'm building the boats, I'm building the bricks, I'm building the houses. Where do I get time to go to school? So we weren't dealing with what we call today a literate society. So how do you make that society literate so that the total society have an understanding of the communal, collective, cooperative system by which the social order exists? You create a language that reflects the ecology that they understand and they've mastered in their daily lives, to explain to them the deeper philosophies that the scientists and others have to study. So when we look at, say, the Demotic script and the Heretic script, those are the language of the priests, the cursive form, the high symbolism. But the Medu Neter was the language for the masses, so that they could know exactly what the priest knows. And that's important to understand, because what we have today, we have a Black intellectual class that have not found a way to interpret to our masses what they know. So they stand on pedestals showing what they know, but the masses don't understand the basics of how to set up a business in their community. The masses don't have the basics on how to set up a not-for-profit. The masses don't have the basis for how to challenge the educational system. The masses don't have the basis to tutor their children to stop. The only way you're going to stop police violence in America is become the police. You see, you're not going to stop police violence by telling a racist, sick, backwards, misinformed, hateful, anti-human white person, and even their sick Black counterparts, to please stop. You have to take over the police department. The community must become that police department. You got to have police. You're going to have contradictions in your social order. You have to have an instrument to help you manage the contradiction, but that instrument must be human. And so where is our elite that's putting together the programs so our children starting in the 9th grade can prepare to become firemen and policemen, being prepared to pass these civil service exams, et cetera, et cetera. Because we can talk all about the heavy civilizations we built, but we lost them all to an enemy. And the enemy was ourselves, okay? We lost them to our arrogance and our egos. We lost them to our mismanagement of our relationship between male and female. We lost them to when we lost the focus of the importance of family versus the importance of the state. And the family is the foundation of all civilization. And at the core of that family is the feminine element. And when we marginalize her, we marginalize the entire civilization. And we're still doing that. So when we go back to study our civilization, to go forward, let's look at the most minute element when Dr. Shashi McIntosh was talking on the piece that she was doing, in the book of the pyramid text, because some of that was from the pyramid text. And that same verbiage is in the book of the Coming Forth by Day. When Amun realized itself as a masculine element, Amun says in the pyramid text, I created myself out of myself. I caused existence to exist so that existing might exist. When I realized I existed, ma'at, the feminine principle of harmony, balance, reciprocity, justice, was at my side. I didn't create her. She was in creation when I realized I was in creation. But we have to take that serious. When I coughed up Shu, the air, and Tefnut, the elements, we're talking about quantum physics in that discussion. That's not religion, unless we're going to call our science religion. What we've allowed is for the white man to take our science and call it science and reduce us to something called religion. The very thing he's talking about, science methodology, as far back as you can go, we use that methodology. You can't even come up with a calendar without using that methodology. You can't measure a piece of land and produce geometry without what we call the scientific methodology. So they've taken our spiritual system and call it their science and reduce our spirituality to practicing their religion in blackface. We may call it Europe, but we may call it somebody else, but we're doing the same thing. We worship an Oludamari, some god up someplace in somewhere. And the average person don't know the word Oludamari is a feminine and not a masculine word at all. And yet we call it a hymn. So there's a lot of things we've got to do when we go back to look at the old civilization. What were they doing? What they were doing is making sure the most fundamental thing that a civilization does is make sure that people can have food, can have clothing, can have shelter and security. That have not changed till today. When we talk about taking over an urban center and controlling it, if you're not controlling land, labor, and resources, economic, politics, and culture, for the purpose of providing food, clothes, and shelter, you're not even in a movement. You're just doing rhetoric and foolishness. Sounds good. You can write nice books about it. But if I can't show this man and woman in the African American community and the world African community how they can eat today, what am I doing? If I can't show them how to clothe themselves, how to house themselves, and how to maintain the necessities that produces food, clothing, and shelter, what am I telling them? We walk down our blocks in any of our community, and we call it a Black community, but the Chinese run the washer mats. The Koreans run the nail parlors. Another Asian group runs the dry cleaners. The Arabs control the corner stores. And so that's not your community. That's their community. You're just in a neighborhood. So if we're going to understand freedom, if we're going to understand what Dr. Malana and Baba Amari was talking about with Kawaida, they were talking about controlling land, labor, and resources where you live. They were talking about controlling economic, politics, and culture where you live. That means if they're going to be a police department and the community is Black, then those policemen should be Black. But that doesn't just happen. They have to be intention. All intent must have content. So the content of our intention is to produce young people that can pass the civil service exam, monitor them, so when they do get into the police department, that we can follow their character and their behavior. That means our rites of passage programs can't just be hit and miss for a few people who happen to be in the movement, because if you're not in the movement, for the least of us, you're not in a movement, okay? This movement is not about those of us that we got consciousness, because if you have consciousness, it means you're serving the least of that community, the homeless, the unemployed, the underemployed, those on social welfare services, etc. Those are the people who need the movement. And for those of us in this race, who have been able to get skills and tools, then our job is to look at ancient African civilizations, see how they were constructed, what was at the core of it. You know, even white folks got that. That's how they built Europe. They studied us. They didn't just pop up and did this thing. The reason they got an obelisk, a Tekanu sitting in Washington, is a symbol of the model they're trying to follow. But we don't understand it. We see the Washington Masonic Memorial, but that's a symbol. They say, listen, there's a body of rules that the African established. It was imitating cosmology and ecology. Okay, imitating nature. You know, our body is about 70, 80-something% water. And then we are made up of the rest of the minerals that we know of, but about 4 of those minerals being dominant, you know. And this configuration that the universe did, because the universe simply created itself as a human being, as it created itself as other things. You go in any African language and you look for the word for God, and almost all those words mean the totality of everything. The totality of everything. The Ewe said, Sobelisa, the totality of creation itself is divinity. And all of us are part of that divinity or divine body. We're not separate from it, which is one of the biggest crime that the Westerners have done, was saying, you're here, God's there. You know, you're here, heaven's there. No, that's not what the African says. The African says we're a part of that. Matter of fact, we are that thing. The only way anything we call God or divine does anything in the human family is through us. Shashi was talking with her beautiful soul, God bless her, about the womb. Well, we come into this world through the womb of a woman. That's how humans are created. So who's doing the creating? Some mythical god in the sky, or the woman? Or is the woman, like the rest of us, an aspect of the divine itself? Not something separate from it, but an aspect of the divine that creates. Because that's the only way. There's no stork dropping any babies. They're not growing out of the ground. They're not flying from the sky. They're coming through the womb. So if the creator is if the divine is the creator, then the woman is an aspect of divinity that creates. This is the way we taught our culture. Culture means to cultivate. What is it that you're cultivating? You're cultivating the body of wisdom that was extracted from your understanding of cosmology and ecology. So when you look into, say, the Yoruba system, you see they have Orishas. And people say, oh, Orishas are God. There's not a word in the Yoruba language calling an Orisha a God. They're forces of nature. They're also forces within the human body, okay? They're powers that you must develop deliberately to assist you in the living process, to be optimal. So our civilization, it was about that. How do we, like they said, as above, so below, how do we replicate it in our duplication so that it reflects the perfection of cosmology and ecology in our social construct? But then you got to get into details, you know, the laws, the regulations, the thing that guides you in your daily life. And that's where we come to the set of principles like Ma'at. What are those principles? Truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, balance, and reciprocity. Beyond the word, what do they mean? How do we teach them? How do we enforce them in place? How do we know when people are getting weak and must be fortified in the use of these concepts? That's what our civilization is really about. How to replicate the universe, because we are the universe. There's nothing in the outer universe that's not in us. We function as a universe, a macro universe, but we need to study the micro universe. Which one? Macro? Yeah. In order to understand who we are. Let me show you a simple thing. If I go to Ghana, everybody loves jollof rice. Give me some, just as I want some jollof rice. Is this the same white rice, the African rice? And we have 3 rice that don't come from Asia and Africa. 2 wetland rice and 1 dryland rice. you see. And so they cook their rice and they use palm oil. And they make this beautiful reddish yellow rice. And they spice it with all the peppers and everything. But if I go to Georgetown, South Carolina, my mama would give me a pot of red rice. That's our jollof rice. We didn't have palm oil. We had tomatoes. So we took the tomato sauce with our hot peppers and black peppers and other peppers, and we recreated in America our jollof rice that we had left back in Africa. If you don't know Africa, you won't even see it in yourself, you see. So I'm going off on this a little bit because it's a point I want to make about African American as a cultural phenomena that is blind to itself. Okay, African Americans as a cultural phenomena blind to itself, so that we want to grab everybody else's culture and say we don't have none. We were the least enslaved of all of the populations in the Western Hemisphere. Slavery in America did not start in 1619 as a major institution, and those brothers and sisters all got free within 20 years from that Dutch ship. Slavery in America as a major phenomena doesn't really, until the 1690s, take on a really identity with the numbers. 1865 is over. That's not 400 years. That's not even 300 years. We were in the bondage slavery with the chains for less than any other population in America. So why shouldn't we have retained more of Africa than any other population in America? Now, why don't we know that retention? And that's where the weakness comes in. Because the retention isn't just in the food and the clothing and the dancing and the music. We did break through with those. But if you were to study the history of the African American church and the African American lodge, like Prince Hall Masonry and the Knights of Pythias and the Odd Fellows and the Daughters of Isis and the Daughters of Ruth and the Daughters of Tenth and the Daughters of Eastern Star, you will begin to see where we hid Africa. Because it was those institutions that produced the Black Wall Streets in Wilmington and in Oklahoma and in Florida and other parts of the country, most of which suffered the same fate as those in Tulsa, even though Tulsa was the biggest one, so we talk about it. But I brought up those institutions because those were our sanctuaries. Those was the places where we could safely hide Africa. And between 1865 and 1929, people who just dropped the change produced over 50 banks, 75 insurance companies, thousands of schools that they built for themselves, and thousands of other businesses coming out of slavery, a 90% illiterate population, and within one generation was a 50% literate population. I'm saying all of this because when we're talking about Kawaida, we're talking about building the fundamental social order, which begins with the construct of a family based on principles that is fundamentally African, communal, collective, and cooperative, and that family bond with other families to create what we call neighborhoods, and those neighborhoods working by those same principles as under Kawaida construct, bonding with other neighborhoods to create communities, and those communities create municipalities that they own and control. You understand what I'm saying? So it's got to be brought into today's context, because there's no value in history if the tools of history and the tools of ancient culture can't be applied to the contemporary situation we're faced with right now. So the key is what all the old people told us: know thyself. We find that of all of the major temples in Kemet. Now, most people say, well, I never see that. I don't see it up there. It is the outstretched wing with the scarab. That is the symbol of knowing oneself. So you'll find that at the doorway of every major temple. You will also find it over the doorway of every Masonic lodge. They don't have an explanation to it. You will find, to walk into any Masonic lodge, there's two pillows. You can't get into a lodge without walking between the two pillows. Designed in the same way of the ancient Egyptian or Kemetic temple pillows. What are they? when you go into the lodge, it's symbolic of returning into the womb of the woman. The two pillows, Dr. Ben always says, between the leg of the black woman, you walk between those two pillars, between the legs of the female, back into the womb to be recreated again, based on the principles of ethics and morals that will establish you as a worthy human being in family and community. So that's what we're really talking about. One of the mistakes we've also made, well, we've made a lot of mistakes, but we've had extraordinary successes too. One of the big mistakes we've made in America is the marginalization of the Nation of Islam. And I speak on this every time I talk. We say, well, you're Malcolm, man. Malcolm was just a man. You know what I'm saying? He was not the divine. He was a man trying to be divine. But he was taught by an institution how to be on this trek. And because the enemy have blinded us to that institution, we reject the very successful model of how to reconstruct black manhood and black womanhood. And so I want to tell Ascac'S this. I hope you as a group do not marginalize the Nation of Islam, because they have a proven track record of bringing the dead psychologically, intellectually, socially, and politically back to life. Study those methodologies. You don't have to become a Muslim. There's so many books the nation has put us. Study the methodologies that we will use to reconstruct our families, reconstruct our neighborhoods, reconstruct our community, and get control of the cities we live in. We say Newark is a majority black city, but we don't own the majority of the business. Majority black city, but we don't own the majority of the banks. Majority black cities, but we don't own the majority of the corporations. So whose city is it? Okay. Mount Vernon, New York, majority black cities, but we don't own the majority of the banks. We don't own the majority of the businesses. We run the municipality for them. Newark has done better than anybody because you brought a young man in whose father and mother was revolutionary leaders for decades. And even him as a young man down at Howard, and as he's growing, he was in this movement and he brought that to Newark. And you've done some extraordinary stuff in Newark. But because you're black, the world ain't looking at you. They had to take a look at the policing the other day because nobody else in the country has managed to pull off what Newark has pulled off. Build a relationship between its police and its people. To build a relationship between the neighborhood, the community, and its people. And so you've done it. You put together a model that they're secretly copying, but not giving you credit for the fact that they're copying your model. And so be clear. What Qaeda was trying to do is establish what Malcolm was calling black nationalism. Control the economics, the politics, and the culture where you live. Control the land, labor, and resources where you live. You see? And that means you must have a certain character. And that's where we look at the principles of Kwanzaa. They're not just days to celebrate, but each of those days represent a set of principles that we should adopt in our daily lives as we construct ourselves and construct our families based on those principles. And they weren't something that was made up by Dr. Maulana. These are fundamental principles out of African civilization processes that he put together with others in order to present to us in a working model to use in urban America. And they were doing very well. And that's why the system moved so heavily on Newark back in that day. You know, I remember going to Newark to the first Black Power conference. And it was in the midst of the rebellion. And a man who had just been arrested. And I remember we were all in a room, Rap Brown, Stokely, Dr. Maulana, Francis Welding, and it was Francis Welding with a beautiful afro that stood up and said, okay, if you men are really black men, go down to that jail and break Amama Baraka out of the jail. This was Francis Welding, 1967, at this little hall or hotel we were at in downtown Newark. But I'm raising that to say, sometimes when we look at civilizations and history, we leave it in too much of a remote place. Ghana have a bird they call the Sancopa. And the concept of the bird is to go back and fetch it. But people don't pay attention to the bird. The bird is looking back, but it's holding an egg in its mouth. And the concept of this bird looking back to see what is the best of the past that I can bring into the future, into the present to create my future. And it's symbolized by the egg. It's like the baby, it's like a child, it's like the unborn concepts, ideas, and principles. But what the bird is demonstrating, if you hold it too tight, you'll crush the egg. If you hold it too loose, you'll drop the egg and get the same negative result. So you must hold that egg just right. So when we look back at our civilizations, and remember, what is a civilization? Now, I'm a priest of Oya. And they say Oya is the wind. What does the wind represent? It represents change. It blows the old, stale away and it brings the new in. What else they say about Oya? They said Oya is the guardian of the gateway to the cemetery. What's in the cemetery? Our ancestors. So if you're the guardian to the gateway to the cemetery, what are you guarding? The wisdom of the ancestors. That's what your history is. When we go back and study our history, when we study our culture, when we study our civilization, we are studying the wisdom of the ancestors. We are having a conversation with the ancestors. We are being informed by the ancestors, you see. And if we can bring it down like that, communal, collective, cooperative, the duality, there's no male without a female. There's no female without a male. There's a whole movement now to take us into this single gender death construct across the world. And the attack is mainly on our community. But if you don't have the opposites, you can't recreate yourself. So your culture must reflect that, you see. Because the culture is your educational system. And the culture must inform and instruct you on how to reconstruct yourself intergenerationally. And then becomes to the thing that will really stop the violence in the Black community. The way you stop violence in the Black community is control the socialization of your children. The way you can control the socialization of your children in modern contemporary America, we must control the boards of education. We must control the junior high school, the elementary school, and the high school. You cannot leave the education of your children in the hands of your enemy. And that's what we've been doing. And when things get so abrupt, we rise up. But no, we must take total control of the socialization process of our children. That's how they get their values, their interests, and their principles. Thanks to Dr. Leonard Jeffries for outlining that for us. But to get control of how they get their values, their interests, and principles, you've got to control the curricula, and you've got to control and monitor the teachers, and you've got to control and monitor the value system that's coming through that thing you call your education system. Because the kids who are committing the violence in the community are the ones who are hopeless, they've been injured, they've been brutalized, they've been marginalized, they're angry with everybody, and they don't see a possibility in life for themselves. So if they don't see a possibility in life for themselves, why would they see it in me and you? And the only way you stop that is you take control of your education. You take control of your police. That's what Malcolm means by Black nationalists mean taking control of the economics, politics, and culture where you live. Economics is the most fundamental. It means that's how you make wealth where you are. Now in Newark, you don't have any gold mines or oil wells, right? So where are we going to get the wealth? Your wealth is in retailing and wholesaling. But if you don't control the businesses, who's getting the wealth from the retailing and the wholesaling? Okay. Where else you get wealth? Real estate. But if you don't control the real estate, who's getting the wealth? From your community. The other place you get wealth is being the service givers. You call for a plumber now, and you may get somebody from Armenian or from Guatemala. In the heart of the Black community, we can't find a Black plumber. We can't find a Black electrician. We can't find a Black carpenter. We can't find a Black mechanic. We can't find a Black brick mason. That is what's wrong with us. We've forgotten what the fundamental building blocks are of a civilization. You see, we've forgotten what the fundamental building blocks are of a community, what the fundamental building blocks of a neighborhood. and of a family, and then the individual that makes up the family. And the fundamental building blocks are the same. That's what they were saying with Kawaida. They had a set of qualities and attributes that was being taught. You know, that's why Kwanzaa and Kawaida was married to each other, because you had to learn these principles. They were your governing instruments. So you can produce a quality individual. So you can take control of economic politics and culture. So you can control land, labor, and resources where you work, where you live. Anything short of that, we're just having a conversation. We're just having a conversation. But we have so many beautiful models. All this beautiful civilization that I mentioned, Kemet, Aksum, Sumer, Monomatapa, the Zulu, you name it. We've already proven we can do this. Let's go back and look at the models of how we did it. And what you're going to find constant is the control of the economic, politics, and culture where you live. That's a constant. What you're going to find as a constant, you must control the land, the labor, resources where you live. That's a constant. And so you turn to systemic ways of establishing the constants. And Kawaida is one of those systemic constructs that have been put together for us that could be used to reestablish control in those areas and in those ways. So when we talk about bringing it back to the individual, like Dr. Hilliar said, that your identity must be shackled to your idea of freedom. So you can't be running around saying people of color when you're talking about the Black community in the middle of Newark. And I don't want to see anybody attacked or treated with hate anywhere in the world. The Asian community, which have been fundamentally a close ally of the right-wing white community for most of their experience in America, and has never in any large way participated in the Black freedom struggle, now is caught in the crosshairs of those white supremacists. And so now the term people of color becomes an operative term. Or our beautiful little sister from Somalia, I think she's representing a Black community in Congress in Wisconsin. Omar, brilliant young lady, but she don't see herself representing the Black people from the community she came from. She's representing the Muslim world. See, and we haven't called her to question on it. Because her skin is Black, we're letting her have a pass. Stop it. We have an identity. We're the third or fourth largest African nation in the world. The only African nation that's bigger than the African American nation is Nigeria, Brazil, and I think the other may be Kenya or Tanzania or Ethiopia, one of those. But I think we're the fourth largest. In their census, they said we are close to 50 million. And when you read and study the census report, as I do, they told us they missed 30% of us. Okay, if you miss 30%, then add the other 20 million in. You deliberately said we missed 30% of the Black community. So we're giving them 50 million. So give me the other 30% too. So we're nearly 80 million in the population in America. Africa is a world phenomenon. There's more than 1 billion plus people on the continent of Africa. And in the diaspora, there's another billion. We're second only to the Chinese in the number of humans in the world. And the African population will overtake the Chinese in the next 20 years. Yet we sit on the wealthiest piece of real estate on the planet Earth, but we're marginalized because we're not organized. And we're not organized because we don't know our historical relationship to one another. And we don't know that historical relationship because the enemy made it a part of his arsenal to destroy our access to our history. He made it a part of his warfare strategy to destroy our culture system. And though it has survived throughout, it is lingering under the colonial education construct, both abroad and at home. And so what you're doing in Ascac'S and what Ascac'S have been doing all along have been bringing this ancient system back to be studied so we can see how they built what they built. I'm not into praising the pyramids. Oh, it's the great wonder in the world. Of course it is. How did they build it? This well, they used bricks and stones, and yeah, but how? They organized their people. Because the one thing we found in studying this history, there was no slavery in building the pyramid. They found out that these people were organized in guilds, just like the unions of today, that they had their own community. They even know the salaries they were paid. They know where they were buried when they died. So as Kwame Ture said, it has to take organization, but the organization must be built on certain principles, concepts, and ideas. And that's what Kawaida frightened them so, because Kawaida brought in certain principles, concepts, and ideas on how to construct a community that control economic, politics, and culture, that wanted to control land, labor, and resources where they live. That was building a brotherhood and a sisterhood of interdependence and respect. And so it was attacked. That's why they went after Brother Baraka so heavily for as long as they did. So when we look back at Kawaida, let's look at the essence of it. What were the parts that made it up? When we look back at Kemet, what were the parts that made it up? Pharaoh wasn't a despot. He was the symbol of what a man should be. The queen wasn't the despot. She was the symbol of what a woman should be, and thus given the authority to protect the nation state. Okay? And that is still true in African traditional communities today. Someone gets to be a king. He doesn't have a job or anything, but he doesn't have a bunch of money that's his. The community takes care of him. But his responsibility is to give guidance and judgment to that community based on the fundamental principles of the culture and the history of that people. And so when we talk about studying classical African civilization, let's not just study it in comparison to the Greeks and the Romans, because they never saw themselves as competitors. Modern day albinos see themselves as competitors. I remember reading a book called Phaedrus by Plato. And you can even find that quote in a book by Kajari on the history of mathematics, chapter 1 in the introduction, paragraph 1. And Plato is saying in Phaedrus, referring to us as Ethiopians, I replace it with Africans, because Ethiopian is not an African word either, that the Ethiopians have given the world all of its sciences. Now, Plato is a big boy. This is the main man. But they never quote this, where he says, Ethiopia has given the world all of its sciences. Then he starts with arithmetic, geometry, medicine, juice, and he goes on. But he said the greatest science of all that Ethiopia has given to the world is the science of writing itself. Do they put that and teach that to our children? Do we teach that to our children? You see, and that's why when we study our ancient civilization, let's bring to the table the pieces that made it work. What was a pharaoh? Was he some dude running around in a chariot shooting arrows? That's one of the things he had to do to defend himself. But his main job was to make sure that the communal, collective, cooperative, the ethical, morals construct of the society was being practiced by everyone. But his main job was to make sure that the man pulling the fishing net and the man who was making the boats and the man who was planting the barley and the wheat and the man who was in the mud making the bricks had the same intellectual understanding as the men in the temple who were given the tools to study the science of nature in order for the society to better itself. I hope you understand what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
So when we bring it like that song is to be when it comes right down to earth. This is about spirituality being your reality, not a religion, not an assign. Spirituality is your reality. Okay. There's a song, a young black man, what's his name? Namsibo is the sister's name, and the brother is DJ KC out of South Africa. It's called Jerusalem. and has wiped the world out. It's about 8 lines, but it's an African rhythm. It's talking about Jerusalem is my home. Jerusalem save me. Jerusalem, I love you. And this Jerusalem, everybody on the planet is dancing and listening to it. Not so much because of the word Jerusalem, because that's a word that did exist in Northeast Africa even before the Hebrews emerged in that community. Not talking about the Jews. Now, they're white folks. The Hebrews and the black folks are there. That city was already named Salam, by the king who was there when they arrived. But the point is, in African history, we still retain so much fragments of yesterday, but we don't know how to hook the fragments up. Like I see the brothers arguing about the Moors and black and da. One Somali professor that I heard on the internet about 3 months ago, in Somalia, the word black meant shining, glowing, right? And if we're just going to take the English interpretation of the word, yeah, you can be like, oh, maybe I can marginalize that. But the African meaning of the word is completely different.
I see.
It was the word they used to describe the sun. They were talking about the expression of energy, the glow, the light that gives light. So when we go back to study our civilization, study our language systems, we have to notice the peculiar things. If you look at the language system that they call Bantu, and the words say Mantu, Intu, Bintu, Bantu, that Intu on all those words means God, their word for God. What does this word mean? It means person, people, place, or thing. So what the African says, when I talk about person, people, place, or thing, God has to either be the suffix or the prefix in it. So that everything contains the essence of God. If you go to the Ewe people in Togo, in Ghana, they have a word called voodoo. That word voodoo that we know from Haiti comes from Benin and Togo. Togo and Benin, they're the same people. Some white men do that lie right through the middle of them. But the word means the essence of God in a thing. So if they want to say the essence of God in nature, they say voodoo daha. They want to say the essence of God in human, they say voodoo gadsi. They want to talk about God in its totality, they say sogbe lisa, the totality of everything, or the totality of creation. But then somebody else now make us think voodoo is some negative, evil, or just confined to Haiti and da-da-da-da. We don't really get to it. When we study our civilization, what was their intent when they constructed the word? What were they trying to tell us to understand? And so when we come back to today's social order, because the past doesn't matter if you can't use it for today. It doesn't matter. And in all cultures, there's some things that are no longer useful in these new ecologies we find ourselves in. So we must discard those things and replace them with things that is functional and useful for our survival in the social orders we find ourselves in today. And that becomes very important to understand, because the culture is everything that a people do. Your clothing, your language, your food, your medicine, your interpretation of science, all of the things that you do the way you do them makes up your culture. Dancing is not culture. It's a tool of culture. Theater is not culture. Music is not culture. Those are tools of culture to help inform the concept, ideas, and principles of culture. Culture itself is your worldview. It's your ideology. And your job is to carry out with it intergenerational transmission of the body of wisdom that allow you to survive as a people and protect yourself against genocide. So if you don't get that right, we're in trouble as we're in now.
Hotep, Professor Smalls, we want to get ready to close out.
Just 2 more minutes.
Yes, absolutely. No,
on the African American, you have one of the most powerful cultures any African people has ever built. But we got to codify it. We haven't owned it. We're constantly running from it. Every people build a culture. We've been here in North America for close to 400 years. We were in the bondage, physical chain slavery for a little more than 200 years. Okay, we are made up of the largest cluster of African gene pool of any group of Africans anywhere in the world, on or off the continent. When I say that, sometimes people get a little confused. I'm going to say it again. We are made up of people from all over that continent. No other community have this cluster. And so it's not inappropriate that we call ourselves African Americans, because all those boundaries that are there now weren't there when we left. It was just Africa. And that's real. And so as you define yourself in the context of the historical experience we've been having together for this 400 years that has bonded us into a people. But if you don't study and know your history, you don't know how you're bonded, okay? You don't know that Prince Hall had a relationship with Richard Allen and Absalom Jones. And so that when they built the Masonic Lodge, the evolution of those men who came together created what we call the AME Church. But they weren't trying to imitate white folks. They created a Black sanctuary, and they hid Africa in that sanctuary. But we have to learn about Africa to find and recognize the elements of it. I just want to give you this before I leave, because there's just so much. We could do this all day. When I was in the Baptist church in South Carolina, I had to go to the mourning bench. Many people, young people, don't know what the mourning bench is, but when you got 13 in the community, everybody was rounded up and you had to join the church. And you had to pick a church mother and a church father. That's like the African uncle and the African auntie. And they took over more authority over you than your parents did. And then in the morning bench day, they bring in an evangelist from out of town, somebody who could really throw down with the shouting and the singing. And you had to close your eyes. They didn't put blindfolds on them. You close your eyes and you got on that bench. You had 7 days to get what they call the Holy Ghost. But you had 7 days to get possessed by the African energy. When I became a Yoruba priest and I had to go to the ground for 7 days with a blindfold on, and I had to get possessed by my Orisha, then I go, oh, shoot. I went through that at 13. So at 13, we saw the African age group implemented in the church. At 13, we saw the initiation into adulthood, so you can join the adult community and begin to learn as an adult. But we see it as a Christian thing, but the white church don't have none of these things in it. So what are these things? These are African cultural retentions that we hid in the only sanctuary we were allowed to have. But it's about taking control of how you provide food, clothing, shelter, and security for yourself and your families. You can't do that without controlling the economic, politics, culture where you live. You can't do that unless you're really in charge of land, labor, and resources where you live. You have to learn to use the vote and control your institutions like education, fire department, and police if you're going to have a community that is really, truly yours. You must control the economic aspects of it, the retail and the wholesale. That's what freedom is about, is making your identity bonded to your concept of freedom. So thank you very much, Ascac'S. It's good to be back with my Ascac'S people again for a moment in time. I hope I said something that has been useful. You are God having a human experience. If you see yourself here and God up there, you're lost, blind, dumb, and you don't really exist until you realize that that thing we call God, I'm an intrinsic part of that thing, having my very peculiar experience. Thank you very much.
All right. Wow. Thank you, Baba. Thank you, Baba James Small. If you just chimed in, we just heard from our keynote speaker at our monthly Ascac'S study group out of Newark, New Jersey, but broadcasting live on Zoom and social media. We just heard from our good brother, Baba James Small, legendary Africana studies professor, activist, community leader, community organizer, for real. Let's give our brother another strong round of applause. Please, brothers and sisters. You can do it electronically too. Another strong round of applause for our brother. Real talk. Before you go, Baba Small, we're going to open up for Q&A. If you can just stay for a few minutes. Oh, thank you.
I'll set aside a day just for Ascac'S. I didn't do anything else today.
Oh, brother, we are so honored. Oh, Ashe. Oh, we're so honored. So before we do Q&A, I just want to recognize we got some very special people chiming in, watching the study group. We got our good brother, man, Baba James Smalls. I'm sorry, Baba Zaid Muhammad. You know, he's here. I just wanted to recognize that brother. He's done and is still doing incredible work in our community. So I want to give him a strong round of applause. I'm going to recognize. We are going to recognize Baba Zaid Muhammad. Right. We have for a moment. I don't know if the brother is still here, but Obalachi was here. He had chimed in for a moment. I don't know if he's still here, but he had chimed in for a moment. Obalachi, OB, we affectionately call him in Newark as OB. All right, it's one of the sons of Amiri and Amina Baraka. All right, so he chimed in for a quick minute. I don't know if he's still here, but if he's still here, thank you, brother. Let's give him a strong round of applause. Obalachi. Oh man. So we also have our good brother doing great work in the Muslim community in Newark, New Jersey. He's chiming in as well. That's Imam Hassan Sharif. Let's give our brother Imam Hassan Sharif. He's a resident Imam of Masjid Muhammad, the legendary Masjid Muhammad, Baba Small, the legendary one. That's the, before it was changed to Masjid Muhammad, it was Muhammad's Mosque number 25 on South Orange Avenue. Some of the baddest brothers and sisters in the city of Newark, back in the day. But they're raising up some bad and bold Muslim brothers and sisters absolutely committed to our empowerment that can see beyond, those barriers you talked about, and come together as African people, as Black people, for Black liberation. So I want to really thank Shafran, Imam Sharif. Thank you so much for coming out. All right. We have also ASCAP members, longtime ASCAP member, MZ Nabawi. In fact, that brother, we connected on social media, Baba Small. We connected as I was promoting, we connected, and he sent me some classic ASCAP videos, brother. I thank him for that. I said, man, I gotta play some of this today. I gotta play, no doubt. We gotta play Brother Khalid, right?
That was a bad piece.
Oh, brother, powerful, man.
Because I had many of those same experiences when I went to Mecca, and I came back and had big clashes when I told people, y'all don't understand them Arabs. There's a whole nother phenomena and race going on over there.
Absolutely.
And, they even turned me over to the CIA, but I escaped.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's crazy. But yeah, so we want to recognize, we want to continue to recognize some of the other brothers. But yeah, that's a bad, that the Cretan ancestors moved us today to play Khalid. He taught so many good lessons in that lecture, but also Dr. Shashi McIntyre.
Oh, that's my mother right there.
Oh,
I was so happy to see Shashi. Wow.
Powerful. I used to go to Rutgers. I already graduated from college, but when she came to Rutgers to teach, I would just sit in her classes, man. Powerful master teacher. Ibaye Ashe to both of them. We also have our brother Ascac'S, Brother Charles is chiming in. That's Brother Charles.
Oh, yeah.
We have him chime in. That's my brother right there. We connect always. We talk many a days, nights. Yes, powerful brother. And we have, of course, the many members of ASCAC'S study group out of Newark, New Jersey, and abroad. They're here chiming in. We want to thank you. And we have some new brothers and sisters chiming in. Dr. Lisa, thank you for chiming in, my sister. Sister Kira, thank you. You made your word bond. She said she was going to come out. Thank you so much, my sister. We have our brother Otto, who was a principal in Irvington. He came out. Brother John Doyle, thank you. Rosalind, thank you. Tahudi, first member of ASCAC. This brother came straight from the Avon, young brother, came out to join ASCAP, man. So we thank our brother Tahuti for chiming in. Of course, my brother Rock Kepler. Thank you, my brother, up there in New Haven, Connecticut, holding it down. He runs a study group. He runs a study group right now, brother. He's in the ASCAP, but he runs a study group on Urugu. All right. He has a popping, strong study group online, on Zoom. They do it on Zoom, and he's the facilitator of that study group. All right. And also, before we let you take Q&A, we want to also just mention some of the books that we've been studying, Baba Small. We've been studying Afrocentricity by Dr. Malife Asante. Right? Might be backwards. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Oh, you got it.
Okay. We also have been studying Dr. Sheikh Antijob's book, African Origins of Civilization, Myth or Reality. These are the required books in our study group. Right?
Well, let me add another required book, Message to the Black Man. We assume that book.
Absolutely.
Even that book.
Absolutely, Papa Small. We also have the Husia, right? We have Dr. Raketti Amin's book we use, A Life-Centered on Mayat. I'm sorry, A Life-Centered Life Living. All right. And we, of course, we have Dr. Malana Karinga's Kawida, all right, which inspired us to do this, to have you come and speak about Kawida and using it as a vehicle for Black political power. Because when you read the book, that's all that's in there.
That's what it's about.
And you spoke to it. You spoke to it, Baba Small, and we need to hear that because like Baba Zaid said, some of us struggle with making all that high science on Nile Valley civilizations, Mali, Ghana, you know.
But you got to translate it into now.
Right. But we struggle with that. We struggle with translating that to, even with our Kemetic spiritual communities, our Yoruba spiritual, we struggle with, using that as a vehicle for Black liberation. So that's why we brought you here, because you have experiences in all these communities under the banner of Black liberation. So we're going to open it up for Q&A, and I just want to read one piece before we do Q&A. It's very important. It's one of my favorite passages from the Metu Neter. All right, it's from the Book of Kiti. Hope I'm not mispronouncing. I'm trying to reclaim my African tongue. It says on page 50 of the Husia, right? It says, "Follow in the footsteps of your ancestors, for the mind is trained through knowledge. Behold their words enduring books. Open and read them, and follow their wise counsel." So I'm gonna end it there. Brothers and sisters, if you have a question for Baba Small, please feel free to ask your question. All right. He said he took time out to give us all this wisdom today. He said, clear the schedule. So if you have any questions, brothers and sisters, please feel free to ask Baba Small.
Hey, Hotep. And first of all, do I give thanks, Baba Smalls, for your wisdom and for your dedication. I've been listening to you on Facebook, and not Facebook, YouTube, but also caught a few of your lectures in person here in Newark, as well as over in Harlem. I have two questions for you. One is personal, and I'll ask that second. I'll ask that first. Are you related to a Professor William Smalls? He was my mentor and professor when I attended William Patterson University, and he's also from South Carolina. So that's the first question I want to ask you. And then the second question, as a principal now of an urban elementary school, my mission is to infuse African-centered studies into our school building. From your professional opinion, and especially with bringing staff into that consciousness, what would you suggest be some starting places that I address relative to the staff? Those are my two questions.
Yeah.
Sure, thank you.
With the first one, those of us small out of South Carolina, we just assume we're all the same family. We're a very large group. And every summer we have 3 different family reunions running around the different areas of the coast trying to attend. So I'm pretty sure that William is family because our family runs from Wilmington, North Carolina down to Beaufort. So that's through Charleston, Georgetown, Beaufort, and so forth. And the second one is, if Baba would share my number with you after yeah.
They were slaves and stuff in South Carolina. Nah, that's where the slaves is at.
Baba James is muted.
What happened?
Okay. Yes, I was telling the brother about Brother Small. He probably is a relative. We absorbed each other in South Carolina. We just assumed because the family spreads from Wilmington to Beaufort. And so all the way down to Jacksonville, Florida, really. And we are a large, the genesis of that family, Andrew Small and Hannah Small, they were a part of the Freewood community. They lived back in the 1820s, 1830s. And we had 3 different Maroon communities that they called they call us the Freewood Ends, right? One was in a place called Bannockburn. One is in a place now called Merle's Inlet, which was called, I forgot the old name, but everybody called it the Freewood. And the other one was called Beth Village, down by Paulus Island Beach. And the other was down in Beaufort. And another in what is now called North Charleston. These were where we ran, and these were the runaway communities. And we talk about Maroon communities in other countries, but we rarely talk about them here in North America. But we had multiple Maroon communities in this country. And someone needs to do a history on those communities. And the second part, brother, ask Baba to give you my number. My son, my oldest son, who's the principal in East New York, and probably have the most African-centered school there. That's Malik Andrew Small. He has a nationwide network of Black principals doing the same thing that you're doing. So I will share your number, share his number with you, and you can tie into that network of brothers and sisters. It's about 91 Black principals nationwide.
Oh, that would be awesome. You want me to put my number in the screen on the chat?
Just, yeah, let me copy it. Well, easier, let me give you mine.
Okay.
I'm gonna just sound it out because I'm not as, I'm 75 trying to chat and all the things y'all do. So it's 914.
Hold on 1 second.
See, you're young. You're supposed to have 3 pens in your hand.
Supposed to have that cell phone in his hand.
I'm multitasking. All right, go ahead.
914.
914.
960.
960.
26.
2693.
93. Yeah, okay. This is a very powerful group of Black men and women who are all the principals. There's 91 of them. They're a national grouping. They don't play the name game. They do have an acronym. But my son will be happy to communicate with you. So call me and give me all your particulars, and I'll give it to him.
Okay, I'm going to call you this afternoon, later on this evening.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. Awesome. Dua, Brother Ato, any other questions? Any other questions that you have for Baba Small? Please ask him now, brothers and sisters. Any other questions? Yes.
Hotel family. Hotel family. It is truly an honor and a pleasure to be amongst such wisdom as Professor Smalls.
Ashe.
And I would like permission to speak.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you, Baba. As those of us who are transitioning or moving up in our to become elders, and we have watched the evolution of African, the resurrection of African consciousness at this time, how do you see us moving African spirituality into the 21st century? Because a lot of times when we're having this conversation with people who are not quite as studied or not aware of African spirituality, they tend to think that we are going back into a time frame or era that that once again it's a past time frame. But many of us try to help them understand that African spirituality is evolving. It's an evolution. So with your wisdom, how do we have this conversation moving forward in the 21st century?
Good question.
Okay, that's a very good question. One of the first things you do, don't break with your youth. Always stay involved with some youth organization, some youth formation. I do stuff with youth almost every week, 2-3 times. I'm talking about youngsters in their teens and their early 20s, both in Africa, the Caribbean, and here. Stay involved with the youth, because the generation gap is a false, it's a, what's that word, oxymoron? It's not something we need to cultivate or accept as existing. And so we have to make sure we stay bonded. 2, stay locked in with your women. Don't get caught up in the male do this and the female do this and get into that male-female competition foolishness, because life exists only when the two becomes one and create that family. And then the other part of it is how we define. I don't even like the term African spirituality, but then because other people are talking about spirituality. As I suggested to Sister Patricia Newton just before she passed, when we were doing a forum, we should use the term African sacred science, because first of all, it is a science of understanding cosmology and ecology in practice, right? So that's why you find, if you look at the lowest in the voodoo system, the Orishas, the Ascac'S system, the system in ancient Kemet, all of them had what we falsely refer to as a god of the forest, a god of herbalism, a god of medicine. You understand? We were talking about science, and we had already broken it down. So we're talking about a science of how to live as human beings in accordance with the principles of Ma'at, which we learn through understanding the universe. This is something we created. We said, look at how the thing works. So in our artificial social ecology, let's imitate the thing. The thing is the everything. The white man is now trying to call it his theory of one. But he'll never get it, because he doesn't have the capacity to contain the body of energy that we refer to as spirit. And we do. But we need to understand this is not about rituals. Every society create whatever ritual is necessary to teach the concept, ideas, and principles they're trying to imbue in the mind of the people. That's all the ritual does. You know, I mean, I can kill all of this birds I want. We've been killing birds and everything else. We're still in the situation we're in, right? So it ain't about killing the bird. I need to understand, if I kill a bird, because there is a science there. If I kill a bird and I release the energy of that bird, do I have the scientific knowledge and capacity to direct that energy in a useful manner? Otherwise, stop imitating something you do not understand. Let's get at the fundamentals. It is our science of nature. It is our science of the universe, understanding of cosmology, that we're calling spirituality. Spirituality is our daily reality. We are engaged right now in African spirituality, okay? How I live my life, how I resolve a problem. If me and Carol, we've been together 51 years, we still fuss, okay? But how do we resolve our contradictions such that we can stay together 51 years, raise 8 children, right? Kept from losing them to the drugs, and because we grew up in Harlem, right? We raised these children. So how do we get, and they went out in the street like all the other kids. They all wanted to be the B-girls and all this other crazy stuff. But you know what? I went out there after them. And I brought the behind back in my house, okay? I confronted the contradictions where I had to confront them. And then we found institutions to be a part of. The rites of passage programs here, the drumming courses here, the martial arts here, and then you go there with them. You don't send them off. You go there so that you can mentor them through these processes. One thing that is so damaging in our community is that we're allowing our girl children to be raped and molested and abused, almost 90% of them before they get to be 18 years old. We got to bring that to an end.
That's right.
You know, we got to accept some of the contradictions we're caught up in and start dealing with it so we can start healing. And then what will get you, you find that almost 50% of boys get molested. We don't even get into that. So we have to bring African spirituality down to earth. Believe it or not, it took me a minute to get here. Because if anybody know me in my earlier days, I was a ruthless anti-Christian. And when I walked out of the mosque, I was ruthlessly anti-Islam, Arab Islam. I'm still kind of that. But I found out one thing about the Black church, that it really wasn't Christian at all. And so this comes down to our study of history. When we got out of the chattel slavery, we had no sanctuary. No nation in the world covered down on us or claimed us. We had no African institutions that we could operate in outside of the living room and what we did in the house. So the Black church became the only place that we had a sanctuary to be African. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The sanctuary. It's like they did in Santeria in the Caribbean. It's like they did in Lucome in Cuba. It's like they did in Candomblé in Brazil. But we have not seen our Candomblé. It's the Black church. But we haven't studied it because Christianity on the white side has been such a vile instrument that we rejected our own interpretation of it. And I'm saying to my brothers and sisters now, go back. We made a mistake. Go back. Study it. Study the sororities and the fraternities and why we founded them in the beginning. Study the Prince Hall. Study the Knights of Pythias. Study the Odd Fellows. Study the Daughters of Ruth, the Daughters of Isis, the Daughters of Temp. Who were these people? What were they doing in the Black community? You see? And if you don't study the history, you'll get caught up in their mystery. You'll find that we never lost African spirituality anywhere. We brought it with us. It was always with us all along. But what cloak did we have to clothe it with? And let's remove that cloak and show the people, you've always been here. You never lost yourself. You know? You've always been here.
Baba Small, that was on point. Hotep, Uncle Justin, Brother Alonzo, I'm glad you're here, brother.
Yes, man. Yes. Glad you invited me, brother.
Thank you for the question, Alonzo. That was a good question, because we are getting into a messy space with African spirituality. And I've been a critic for nearly 40 years of my brothers and sisters, so it's nothing new. Stop charging our people all this money for readings. Stop charging our people all this money for initiating. If your job, I have never charged anybody a penny since I've been a priest for over 30-something years. For nothing, okay? You got to pay me if I lecture someplace, you know what I'm saying? But for services as a priest, no. Because the reason we're given that wisdom is to give it to the people. Now, if that's all you're doing, then you should be able to do some minimal charge that's reasonable and makes sense. But don't tell me that a brother or sister comes and says, oh, I want to study Yoruba, and then you say, okay, I got to give you a reading, I got to do this. The next thing you know, that person walking out with a $2,000 bill. That is unacceptable to me. I'm sorry. Okay? Because it is not necessary. The wisdom don't belong to us. The wisdom belongs to the universe itself. We are its emissaries. We should take that responsibility in that way. And so it's very important that people understand. People in the Institute know how I feel on that, because I've been saying this to the Buddha community, other communities for decades. And to their credit, some communities have come forward and said, Baba, you're right. We got to create new ways of income for the house so that we can minimize the charges to the brothers and sisters. We try, because if it's just a couple, we got 70, 80 million people, but we got 5,000 of us in the tradition, that ain't gonna work. We need to get them 80 million people to understand what we understand. We need to get them to look at what we're looking at. And so we've got to stop making ourselves exclusive. There's nothing special about me except I've been gifted by my ancestors and the divine to have a body of information that I'm trying to give to anybody who will receive it. Okay? All of us have the same responsibility. I don't have no responsibility that y'all don't have. Okay? Our job, let each one teach one, and the intergenerational transmission of body wisdom is our duties as human beings. And as African human beings, when the universe first manifests as a human being, it manifested as an African woman. And she gave birth to the rest of us. There's no other way scientifically that can happen. Okay? And so we've got to start like going back as far as we can. Because in that book, remember I quoted the pyramid text. At the end of the dissertation, Amun-Ra says, and I came from my mother, Nun. And this is the God of gods. But in the finishing of his dissertation, he said, I came from my mother, Nun. And remember in the opening of the dissertation, he says, I create myself out of myself. You understand what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
That is, it is just a one. We're all the same thing with different levels of understanding of what the thing is. And as we say in Yoruba, each of us came to the earth with an assignment. We accepted that assignment. And we come here and we have to recall that assignment and then try to fulfill that assignment. That's our destiny.
Okay.
Now, before we move forward, brother,
Go ahead, Brother Alonzo.
the African spiritual sacred sciences. That's what you
I would just call African sacred science.
All right,
it is
Baba.
the science of the universe. It's
All
the
right.
body of knowledge. You know, like that's why I took it back to astrology walking in. We look at astrology now, the Europeans just play with it, right? It's a little game in the newspapers, people write little books. But astrology was how our ancestors taught astronomy to the masses and how we're affected by everything else, you know?
All right.
And so the scientists and priests who had to study this thing, they couldn't give all that technology to the farmer. So what do? Put together a system to show that farmer how all of this relates to you, how all of this affects you, and how you affect all of this. The days of the week, the time you were born, the stars, the moon, the planets, how it all affects you on certain days and at certain seasons, at certain times, and what it does to your behavior. And so when you become aware, you become conscious of living in the right now. Spirituality is your right now. It's your reality. You know?
I say, Baba. Thank you, Baba.
Thank you, Brother Alon. Brother Tahuti, you have a question? Oh, I'm sorry. No, I saw Brother Tahuti had his hand raised for a long time, but I think we missed him. But go ahead, Brother Rob. We're from the contact.
Yes, my brother. Yes, my brother. It's an honor. It's an honor, Mr. Smalls. It's an honor. Yes. Thank you for being the master teacher. Thank you, my brother. Yes, I have two questions. One is back in the day, you always went by Professor James Smalls. You ever had a different name? And have you ever thought about changing your name? Dropping a name, because I know that's your original name. Have you ever thought about coming up with, like a dropping a slave name and taking on like a free liberated name?
I think about it all the time. I was thinking about it on the porch last night. And then it comes back to the most fundamental of all questions. What am I going to do with Mama and Papa? They're all sitting back there. I don't know if you can see all of those. Those are all my ancestors from this place. So how do I retain him? So here's what I did. I gave all my children traditional continental names, with the middle name being from one of the ancestors.
Yes, sir.
I do have other names. I'm in the Yoruba, I'm Obenjoko Adebayo. In the Akan, I'm Nana Kofi Mpansa. You know, and I'm Neahito Okropon. And I use them interchangeably wherever I'm at. But James Small is the son of Lucille and Paul, and the grandson of Andrew and Susan, and the great-grandson of Peter and Martha, and the great-great-grandson of Andrew and oh, Grandma, I forgot your name. I'm getting old. And then on the other side, my on the Alston side of me, I'm Padjo and Matt Hope. my Pajo, my great-grandfather, came from Uganda. On the other side, my great-grandmother came from Sierra Leone. And so I grew up in a root woman house. So I knew a lot of me,
Right.
and Africa me, before I went into the world. So I tell people, give your children the names, but don't forget these ancestors who put up this mighty fight wearing the names of another language. Even though we know when we study etymology, all languages emanate out of Medu Neter. So that's another thing we need to be clear on, though they may have bastardized it, minimized it, and the lack of consciousness. So that's why I haven't changed it, because I don't want to lose Andrew Small and Susan Small and Hope Alston and Joe Alston and Peter Small and Martha Small and so forth.
Right.
But I make sure that my children, you know, have names that come from home. So I got Sanmani, because my wife is from East Indian and African extract. So we have a Chanmuni, you know, we have a Naja, we have a Malik, we have a Nasia, we have a Malia. You understand? So let them step back, but keep the link. Because we don't want to lose 400 years of mighty ancestors. The whole world is trying to marginalize them, but I'm going to keep them alive in me and the children.
Great question, Brother Sahui. Great question. Thank you, brother. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
We got one more question.
I also have a secret name. You know, when you get initiated, you do get a name that you only share in your prayers with you and God. So
I like that.
That's quite African.
Ashe.
Yes. Ashe.
All right. Thank you, Brother Toby. All right. We have our good brother, my comrade, Brother Rock Kepper. This is the brother that runs a powerful study group up in New Haven, Connecticut. And they're studying Dr. Marimba Andi's book, Urugu. And so, you know, Brother Rock, go and ask your question, bro.
Good.
Oh, okay. Internet. Okay. All right. That's right. That's why we got our comrades, our brothers and sisters up there in Canada. That's a part of your our study group. Yeah, they got a Robert Small. I don't know if you know, not to cut you off, Brother Rob, but we have some brothers and sisters connected to Ascac'S up in Canada. They have and you correct me if I'm wrong, Brother Rob, they have a institution, right? They have.
I organized one of the first Ascac'S study groups in Toronto.
Oh, wow.
So,
Ashe.
Sekou and others. We used to drive up there, you know. So that's a powerful community.
Yes. Go ahead, Brother Rob.
Right. I got the back on mine, you know. Right. When I was younger, I made the fundamental mistakes too that a lot of us are making now, and that's why I talk about it. I was in the OAU and the Muslim Mosque, so I was opposed to the Nation of Islam. But it didn't take me long to realize that's not the right path. I was opposed to the Christian church. I didn't like Dr. King. Dr. King, one of the greatest leaders we've had, but it's because he was a Christian, you know, because we were imitating what we were fighting. But as I began to learn African culture, African sacred science, who am I here to teach? If I'm going to marginalize all the people I've came to teach, push them all the way and criticize them, who am I talking to? You know, 97% of our people is in the church. So if I say they don't count in the conscious discussion, then who am I teaching? Who am I talking to? If I see one of my brothers in the 5% nation, he simply has a pathway. I see my brother in the Nation of Islam, he has a pathway. I see my brother who is Buddhist, he has a pathway. He's Methodist, he has a pathway. And so what I'm saying is like, okay, let's examine the paths that we're on and the goal we say we're reaching for, all right? And if that goal is to restore African integrity, we have to examine will these pathways lead us to this. And sometimes the pathway is a temporary vehicle, you know? It gets us a certain distance down the road. Then we have to dismount that vehicle and go to another one. And so it's essential that we deal with the whole Black people when we are discussing moving forward with higher African wisdom. It is essential that we tell our history, because when you show people the history, they get it. They get it. When I tell people that in 1892, a group of Black women from Rochester started an organization with a brother called T. Thomas Fortune, but it was the women who came up with the idea. It was called the Afro-American League. It is the Afro-American League. Ida B. Wells is a part of it. Booker T. Washington is a part of it. Du Bois is a part of it. It is the Afro-American League that becomes the Niagara movement. It is the Niagara movement that becomes the NACP. Now, there's some contradiction and fighting and, you know, rift in between ideologies as this movement is taking place, but you're watching one people struggling together through multiple institutions and belief concepts to get to the goal of freedom. And so we have to kind of look at the world in that way. So we have, say, Ascac'S, but we also have AHSA. So they have to learn to fuse and work together. African Heritage Studies Association. We have the Black United Front. We have Sancopa. And we always all seem like we at odds. Can we understand that we are all doing different things for a common purpose? And how do we create the fusion? Even though some of our studies will cross, most of our organizations have certain specific designs. You know, and COBRA has been leading the fight for reparations. The Black United Front has been leading the fight to bring multiple Black organizations together across the nation in multiple municipalities and also fighting for reparations. So how do they fuse their relationship? You see, AHSA have been teaching the study of Africa civilization before there was an Ascac'S, but from a different perspective. They were trying to do it in the classroom, in the university. Ascac'S decided to do it among the populace. So how do they fuse that energy? And we have to learn to make those alliances with one another, because the goal, the common goal, is the freedom of our people. Most of us will live on the earth for about 70 years in the modern health context. And we're going to be dead and gone. Most of us sitting here 50 years from now, we will all be dead. So we have this short window to try and show the next generation how to do unity towards getting freedom. And a big part of that is knowing your history. Dr. Nova says, learn your history, you erase the enemy's mystery. Most of us really don't know our history. We know segments of history, but let's do timelines. Joshua used to teach us this, to do these timelines. Asa Hilliar used to teach us, make a timeline. And you see the interconnectivity of David Walker, Richard Allen, Prince Hall. These men all knew each other. Or they knew the next generation who knew the man who knew the other man in the other generation. But we look at them like individuals, because that's where white people do things. But if we study the timeline of our history, we'll see a thread running from the brothers in Prince Hall all the way to the brothers in the Black Panther Party, you know? But somehow we can talk about a Fred Hampton, but don't link him up with Marcus Garvey and Booker T. Washington.
That's right.
Well, without them, you don't get a Fred Hampton. You understand? You know? So because the history that was created and the contradictions that was confronted that produced the conditions in our community that Fred was reacting to was stimulated by these other brothers and sisters. And so history becomes important as that thread to erase the mystery, because we know that Canada, Europe, that has been unbroken.
Wow. Great question. Great question, Brother Rock Kepper. Baba Small, you have a lot of brothers and sisters chiming in on social media because we're broadcasting simultaneously from Zoom to social media. So we have some brothers and sisters from Ascac'S study groups from around America. All right, they're brothers. We want to give a big shout out to all those brothers and sisters. Hotep. We have brothers and sisters just chiming in. You know, I don't know if I'm able to get to all their questions. I'm trying to get to some of them. There's so many, and I hope we're running out of time. But there's a few questions folks have. I'm gonna try to gather this up. We have our brothers and sisters all the way in California, you know, chiming in. Hotep, Uncle Justin Nev, to you brothers and sisters, all of you. All right. And again, if you're just chiming in on social media, we have as our keynote speaker at our Ascac'S study group in Newark, New Jersey, we have the legendary Africana Studies professor, activist, community organizer, Pan-Africanist, our brother, Baba James Small. So if you're just chiming in, man, you missed most of his lecture, brothers and sisters, but thank you for chiming in. All right. And before we close out, I mean, again, I have Baba Zaid. I believe he's still chiming in. Let me just check. I think he's still chiming in. Yes, he's still here. And I just wanted to say a few words about Baba Zaid. You know, I get emotional talking about this brother because he was one of our elders that reached back to us, you know, and created, you know, PE classes in the community for free, no charge, no charge, and taught us supplementary lessons on Black liberation struggle. I was a college undergraduate student at Seton Hall, and I got and we had a few great professors there at Seton Hall. Big shout out to Dr. Sells, William Sells. You may know Dr. Bill Sells, Baba Small. We had Professor.
That's one of the brothers. Bill was out there a long time.
Yes, after he retired recently from Seton Hall, but he chaired the Africana Studies Department at Seton Hall. We had Professor Pritchett, Forrest Pritchett, dynamic professor, right? But it was going to Baba Zaid's classes at the Newark Library. Well, I received a grounded, a deep, you know, we talk about African deep thought. I received a deep education on, you know, the original Black Panther Party, Brother Malcolm, Omar Wali, El Haj Malik El-Shabazz, Imam Amiri Baraka, you know, the Black Power movement, you know, civil rights to the Black Power movement. I received that education from my brother Baba Zaid, and you know, we love him so in Newark, in Jersey. We love him, we respect him, immensely, you know. And when I got rid of my European name, Baba Small, it was Baba Zaid who inducted my naming ceremony, you know, and my children's naming ceremony. My wife and I have been together for 24 years. We're going on 24. September 13th. We have 3 boys. All right. One is off. He's going to Rutgers. He's going into his 3rd year at Rutgers. Our middle one is gone. He's graduating from high school and he's going to Felician U. And then we have our little one, Jalil. He's going to the 8th grade. But my you know, Baba Zaid, man, he's been with us, guiding us, keeping us grounded, making sure we don't get crazy. You know, he's keeping that stuff all up in the air and not making it real practical for our struggle. So I just wanted him to say a few words. And if you have any announcements, he's actively involved in so many organizations. But if he has a few words or announcements he would like to share, please, Baba Zaid, you have the floor, brother.
First, I want to say, didn't nobody come here to hear me today. We all came here to hear Baba James.
No, we like hearing from you too. I love seeing your little face.
Playing, right?
That's one of my teachers
right there. But just very briefly, Baba James, as always, I salute you, sir. Good to see you. Right. These young men, and I'm talking about Brother Bashir, Brother Dashan, who's still on,
Right.
Brother Atta, who's not on, but who was on.
Mm.
All young soldiers that I had the honor of having served with me in the new Black Panther Party.
Absolutely. That's
Right.
right.
These are young men who are not afraid of our people and our kids in these streets.
Ashe.
And all of them are teachers.
Ashe.
All of them are teachers. Teachers, and I always say teachers and social workers make the best organizers if they just get all that colonial caca out of their mind. It'd be all right.
Ashe.
Khaled made it plain. Free your African mind and save your black behind. And I was loving when you opened up with Khaled today, bro.
Ashe.
And Shashi, it was Shashi that brought me to Ascac'S back in the 80s. So keep doing what you're doing. That's all that's my own. You just keep doing what you're doing. Keep it practical, keep it real, and let it lead to the kind of organization that we all talking about and trying to figure out.
Right. Because we've got to know we are at war.
Absolutely.
There's no bones about it. We are at war.
Now speaking of war,
mm-hmm.
Going down to Trenton June 21st to raise hell at the State House.
Right.
Around these so-called police reform bills. And I always say that with bated breath because I'm not a reformer, I'm a revolutionary. Right? But on the way to where we got to go, we got to, sharpen all of these contradictions and push all of these things as far as we can push them. And when we see we can't push them no further, that means we got to do something else. It's time to go to those other stages. But yeah, we're going down to Trenton on June 21st. Mayor Ras Jewel Baraka, the son of Amiri Baraka, put together the strongest civilian oversight body in the country.
Yes.
And of course, your friend, the white man, went into court with the police union to try to block that.
That's right.
So, and then when it went to the high court said the only way you can have it is to have it through the legislature. So we, getting ready to storm the legislature to try and get that passed through. And it would make it wouldn't be the difference, but it would make some difference. It would save some black lives if we had that instrumentality in place. So that's on 12 noon on the 21st of June. We're going to storm the State House in Trenton for a bill to make our board what it should be and to allow the creation of boards throughout the state. It'll be the whole country looking at Newark for what Black Power direction looks like. And looking ahead, when everybody and the dates haven't been set yet, the next year marks the 50th anniversary of the Gary Convention that Amiri Baraka helped organize and help rescue from foolishness when that got crazy, right? So the 50th anniversary of Gary gives us an opportunity not just to appreciate what was done at Gary, but what we need to be doing different that allowed us to forget Gary, right? And the implementation of Black Power. So just put that in the back of your head. That's what's coming down the pike in Newark, New Jersey. And
our mayor, our brother, Ras J. Baraka, is intrinsically involved in organizing a convention to commemorate and give direction, but commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Black Power, National Black Political Convention of Gary, Indiana. So I'm looking forward to that, Baba Zaid. Looking forward to that. We got to have, Baba Small, we got to have you, brother. We got to have you somewhere in that program. All right, brother.
I missed that going to Gary because I was sent on an assignment to California at the same time. And I remember a couple of my brothers, Tony, about 3 other brothers that went from the organization to Gary. And, I was going like, I'm always being sent out in the field and I missed the big things. And I was supposed to go there.
Well, again, Mayor Baraka, along with other brothers and sisters, our brother Ed Riley, he's the executive producer of a community-based radio show called the All Politics on Local Radio Show. You've been a guest on.
We had Driver James on a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. Absolutely, right, absolutely. Baba Zaid giving guidance as he does, wisdom. But brothers and sisters are spearheading this the organizing of the commemoration of the 50th anniversary of the National Black Political Convention of Gary, Indiana, but also to do it to give direction, future direction for our people to seize Black political power in these cities, in these predominantly Black cities that we live in. You know, so Baba Small, we know we gotta have you come be a facilitator or a panelist somewhere in the program, brother.
Oh no, I don't mind at all. I mean, war is war. You go where you're sent. Baba Zai, I'll be getting in touch with you because me and some others have been discussing another Pan-African conference. The last one we did in Uganda, and a lot of people who was at the 7-pack didn't want to recognize the 8-pack, but that's one of our little weaknesses. We have to stop that foolishness, you know. But we'll talk about it, but we're talking about July 22nd, and we're trying to find 3 different nations that they're willing to host it on the continent.
Sure.
So, but there's a lot of logistics, and that we should go to this with an African focus and not get caught up. The last 2 really got caught up in the Marxism versus the capitalism. I don't give a damn about either one. Give me Africanism. And we'll take from capitalism what we need, we'll take from Marxism what we need, and we'll point our worldview based on the necessity of our people. But I think this is a good time that a call should come together and to bring out, especially the young people, and this is where the mantle should really get passed, you know, to the next generation. So I'll be getting in touch with you on that, and we got to set up some kind of dialogue committee so that we can get that moving.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I shaded that too. I'm pretty sure, you know, Baba Zaki would be somewhere involved. I mean,
he's a soldier. You can throw the weapon up in the air.
Absolutely.
He'll be sleeping and he'll reach up and get it.
Absolutely. 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 But again, he's very special to Newark, the Newark area. I know he's heavy, you know, he's respected in New York and Pennsylvania, but he's dearly loved and respected in Jersey for all the great work he has done and continues to do for African people in New Jersey. So thank you, Dua, Asante Sana, Chukwan, Al Dupwe. Thank you, Baba Zaid. Bless him with your presence, for real. That means a lot. That means a lot to us. And so we're going to close out, but before we close out, I you know, Brother Dashan, he's Baba Zaid mentioned Brother Dashan. That's my partner. You know, he's the co-coordinator for Ascac'S study group in Newark, New Jersey. I don't know if you want to say if he was Brother Dashan. I don't know if he's still there. I see his thing. Brother Dashan, you still there? Okay, he's all right. He might have his stuff muted, but he is the coordinator for Ascac'S study group in Newark, New Jersey. Good brother, journalist. We call him the people's journalist, Baba Small. You can Google
we go back from his youngest beginnings.
Yes, absolutely.
Very proud.
Absolutely. And like Baba Zaid said, you know, we all were members of the Newark chapter, New Black Panther Party. You know, and we learned such a great deal of organizing on the ground with our people, you know, and that was the challenge. I mean, Khalid and Baba Zaid, you know, they challenged many of us to take the high science of Nile Valley civilizations and take it to the community, take it to the street, you know. And Khalid had a deep understanding of that. You know, he took the best, he did what Khalid asked us to do. He took the best, you know, of nationalist streams and synthesized it together to create a Black liberation path for our people, man. Very brilliant.
Just remember, the key is you gotta feed people, you gotta clothe people,
yes,
you gotta house people, and you gotta keep them safe.
That's right. Absolutely.
That's right. That's the foundation, motivation for our efforts. Everything else becomes the strategies and the tools we do to do that.
Absolutely.
And sometimes we kind of lose track of why we're doing this. Feed people, clothe people, house people, and keep them safe.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
And if we can do that, we can realize our freedom.
Right.
If you can't do that, you're still enslaved.
Right. Absolutely, absolutely. And again, I want to give a big shout out, Hotep, Uncle Justin Nev, to all ASCAP members, supporters that came out today. Thank you so much. Dua, Asante Sana, Adukwe, thank you for coming out. I see my brother Cesaro's here. He's down in Jacksonville by way of Africa. He's down there working out. I think he's trying to build an ASCAP chapter down there in Jacksonville and in Nigeria and Uganda. So I wanted to say thank you, brother Cesaro, for coming out. Brother John, I see you, brother. Thank you so much for coming out. Again, before we're gonna close out with Harambe, Baba Small. We typically we usually do that. All right. We close out in Harambe. Harambe is a Kiswahili word that means people pulling together. All right. And so before we close out, are there any other questions or comments or announcements that folk have before we close out? Any other announcements? No enough.
Yeah. Brother Small?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Hotep Baba, how are you today?
Hotep, Baba Child, how you doing?
I'm good. This was an excellent session today. One of the things that I really admire about you, Baba, is that you have this way of synthesizing the collective traditions, but also making it simple. But it's as I said in my comment, it's elegant in the simplicity. It's not just like, it's not just plain say. It's elegantly, beautifully laid out so that anybody can understand it. So the question that I had initially, I was going to ask Bashir that to ask the sisters. I see that 2 or 3 sisters on the chat, and none of them had made any comments. But that led me to the question I'm about to ask you. How do we get sisters more invested in Africanizing them and Africanizing the community? Because not the sisters are our first teachers for our families in the most part. And as you laid out, the sisters are the closest to the creator. But also as African Americans, us, me being a single male, I'm often having conversations about the realism of our current desires and what we're looking for in mates. In the African American community, there's more sisters.
Don't get too complicated, brother. He's running out of time.
Well, how do we get the sisters more invested? Because it's very important for us as African people. There can't be no African community if the sisters are not involved in it.
I think the sisters are more invested than you know. We have to learn how to make alliances. There's probably more female organizations taking on the issues of the Black community than there are male-centered organizations.
Absolutely.
And so we need to make more alliances with those organizations. One of the mistakes, the other mistake we made, a very fundamental mistake. Malcolm said the ballad or the bullet, not the bullet or the ballad. And we acted like he said the bullet or the ballad. And we've been behaving like it's the bullet or the ballad. And so we've missed in a large way how to really make that ballad a bullet, especially at the local level. Now, I'm not putting on Black folks for voting because we've outvoted. If you study the voting trend in the country for the last 40 years, our voting arc has been better than any other group in the country. It's just that we are so under attack because of our numbers. We proved we gave them Obama twice. We just gave them Biden, okay? So don't be telling me we don't vote. But we have to learn, especially the brothers, the sisters are very invested in this area of struggle. The brothers need to learn how to get on the ballot. What are the election rules in the community you live in? How to do petitions in the street with your people? How to pick the person you want to run for political office? We've always left that in the hands of the sisters, and they're working magic with it. So we need to build alliances with the organizations. We need to build alliance with these Soros. We just marginalize them as being petty bourgeois and leave them out there. Yeah, these are the lawyers, the doctors, the teachers, the social workers, the psychiatrists just running our community. So the brothers got a task at their feet to learn how to make better alliances with the organizations that are predominantly women.
Great question, Brother Charles. Pastor Kelly. Great question, my brother. And thank you, Baba Small, for again blessing us with your presence today, brother. I mean, Dashawn and I said when we start the study group, we got to have Baba Small speak. You know, you have so much
I
wisdom.
appreciate y'all. I appreciate y'all.
Hey, brother, we trying to do exactly what you said, man. Bring all that into the community, into the streets. The high science of Nile Valley civilizations.
Before you go into Harambe, let me give you the spiritual reason why what you just say makes sense.
Go ahead, my brother.
Your mother and father gave birth to you. They gave birth to themselves. When they were given birth to by your four grandparents, they were giving birth to themselves. You're the same organism moving through time. So when you're teaching the youth, you're teaching yourself to be better than you are now. And so and that's an African understanding. And if we can keep clarity in that, we realize it isn't a stranger you're talking to. You're talking to you.
Ashe. That's powerful. That's powerful. That's probably, again, I mean, Baba Small, you're getting all kinds of praises right now on social media, and in the text. You probably, I don't know if you can, you said, how old you? You said 75 now, Baba Small?
Yeah, I'm heading for that 76. So I'm trying to get as much work done as I can.
You're looking good.
I will eventually run out, right?
You're looking good, brother. But if you check out the chat, people are sending you messages. I mean, they're saying awesome, powerful, learned a lot today, so, and we got a lot of young people involved. I mean, a lot of young people involved in ASCAT,
Good.
And that's one of the concerns the elders in ASCAT were worried about. How do we reach back to young people? Well, we're doing that. We're getting a lot of young people.
Learn to give up administrative power to the youth.
That's right, absolutely.
And if you think they don't know, then train them to take your place. We've got too many people in these organizations that's afraid to train the youth to take their place.
Absolutely.
When you're gone, somebody's going to have to take it anyway. So train the youth. This is their thing. I live for you. If you live for yourself, you live for death. The only thing that makes life worth living is to live for the next generation.
That's right.
If we do that, we'll fulfill what Malcolm said, the secret to life is to have no fear. We have nothing to be afraid of because we prepared that next generation to carry this work on.
Oh, no doubt. And Baba Small, listen, whole new generation through ASCAT, right? Through African-centered conscious brothers and sisters, new brothers and sisters like Baba Zaid are relearning, are being introduced, not relearning, but being introduced to brothers and sisters like Dr. John Henry Clark or Dr. Shashi McIntyre, Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad, Brother Malcolm, Omar Wali, El Haj Malik El Shabazz, Asada Shakur, our political prisoners. And we got Baba Zaid here, so I gotta say, free all political prisoners and new African prisoners of war.
But don't be too left now. Introduce him to Dr. King.
Oh yeah, Dr. King, yes, Dr. King, yes.
Introduce him to Booker Washington.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Introduce him to Henry Magnio Turner.
Absolutely.
Introduce him to what's our brother name? Zaid known, who went to Africa and started the Niger River Association, trying to take us back. Martin Delaney.
Martin Delaney, okay, Martin Delaney.
E. Thomas Fortune. Let them know that they have a stream of revolutionary consciousness that has never abated since we stepped off of the first slave ship.
That's right, Ashe. Absolutely, absolutely. We walk in the spirit of Ma'at, walk in balance with that. So yes, we're reintroducing it all to the next generation. And Baba Zaid, before we close down Harambe, I just wanted to say this. Yes, I mean, like Baba Small. Listen, there was talk all around us that we couldn't do this again. That folk were just too far gone. That's not true.
No.
Yes.
We are the African brother. Right. We are the friggin' universe, unconscious of herself.
Right.
When we realize that's who we are, then it's simply a question of gaining the consciousness through a knowledge and understanding of the past to implement in the present to recreate the future that we want to see.
That's right.
The future that we want to see.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, thank you so much, Asante Sana. Oh man, thank you. And Imam Hassan Sharif said he said it's been an honor, learned a lot. Thank you, brother Imam. Assalamu alaikum to you, brother.
Walaikum salam, Aki.
Yeah.
Assalam to the whole masjid.
Yes, he's the resident Imam of Masjid Muhammad, legendary Masjid Muhammad. That is the place where Islam started in Newark, in the Newark area. You already know that. You already know that, Baba Small. But Baba Zaid, you gonna close out in Harambe, my brother? He said, you know how to work. Okay, yes, sir.
Question.
All
I
right.
have a question.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes.
Hi, Baba Smalls. My name is Alicia. This is my first time here. Glad to be here.
Yes.
And I wanted to know, would you be open to sharing your contact information?
Oh, no, ma'am, not at all. So I'm going to tell, but you have a way to be in touch with Baba?
Yeah, I'm in contact. We just connected, Dr. Lisa, we just connected, right?
Yeah, so make sure
Yes.
give Dr. Lisa my phone number, my emails, and all of my contacts.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Lisa, for coming out. You said you were going to come. You made your word bond. All right. Thank you so much. All right.
Oh, and I'm not Dr. Alicia.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm actually working on my doctorate, but I'm not there yet.
Not there yet. I got you.
We make that determination. These institutions give us driver's license, but the integrity of the work you do for our community determines the level and acclaim we hold you and the credentialization that makes sense to us. But we do need their driver's license and rites of passages to get us in the institutions where we can help our people.
Yes. Thank you for your willingness.
Thank you. Well, I'm putting it in the universe, Dr. Lisa.
Dr. Lisa.
No doubt. But she says, the sister Lisa, she said she's interested in Ascac'S. So thank you.
So give her all of my contacts.
Absolutely. I got you. Yes, sir. Absolutely, Baba Small. Well, that's it. We're gonna close out in Harambe. All right. Harambe again is a Kiswahili word that means people pulling together. All right. We're gonna put our right fist in the air. I'm gonna count to 3. 1, 2, 3. We pull it down. Harambe. Right. We do 7 of them. Harambe. That's right. We pulling out the air. Right. Harambe. Right. So we're gonna do it 7 times, and whoever holds it the longest on the 7th one is revolutionary. All right. So here we go. We ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Harambe. 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 Harambe.